The sea had always been the lifeblood of the village. It gave fish to fill their bellies, salt to trade, and winds that whispered stories of the ancestors. But on the day the ocean spat out the Nyoka ya Mwisho, everything changed. It was Obesai, son of the chief fisherman, who found it first. He had set out before dawn, his canoe cutting through the silver waves, when he saw something enormous glistening on the shore. At first, he thought it was a dying whale, its long, sinuous body thrashing weakly against the sand. But as he drew closer, his breath caught in his throat. The creature was unlike anything he had ever seen. It was a fish, but impossibly long, 20, maybe 30 feet. Its body shimmered like molten silver, with streaks of red running along its sides as though painted with fresh blood. Its massive eyes, dark and glassy, reflected the rising sun. But the most terrifying thing was how it moved. Even stranded on land, its body rippled as if unseen hands were guiding it. Obesai paddled back to the village with the speed of a man fleeing a curse. By midday, half the village had gathered on the shore. The fishermen, the traders, even the elders stood frozen in disbelief. Baba Kuntu, the oldest man in the village, hobbled forward and knelt beside the fish. His wrinkled fingers traced the red streaks along its body. Then, he lifted his trembling hands to the sky and let out a cry that silenced the crowd. The serpent of the end has come. A murmur of fear spread through the villagers. Baba, what do you mean? Zubari, the warrior priestess, stepped forward. Her tall frame was tense, her spear clutched tightly in her hand. Baba Kuntu's eyes gleamed with something ancient and terrible. It is the Nyoka ya Mwisho, the Doomsday Fish. It has risen from the deep to warn us. The gods are angry. The world will soon be undone. A woman wailed. A child clung to his mother's waist. Even the strongest men looked at each other with unease. We must return it to the water, one fisherman cried. No, said Mama Della, the village shaman, her voice low and firm. The fish does not belong here or there. It is an omen, not a creature of flesh and bone. If we do not act, destruction will follow. That night, the air was thick with tension. The villagers huddled in their homes, whispering prayers to the sea gods. But Zubari could not rest. She stood on the shore, watching the monstrous fish, its silver scales glowing under the moonlight. Then, the ocean changed. The waves, once gentle, turned violent. A deep, guttural hum rumbled beneath the earth. The water, dark as ink, began to glow a deep, menacing red. And then she saw them. From the depths, more creatures emerged, serpentine bodies slithering beneath the waves, their massive forms breaking the surface only to disappear again. The Nyoka ya Mwisho was not alone. The end had begun. The village did not sleep that night. The sea roared like an angry beast, its waves crashing against the shore with unnatural force. The air smelled of salt and something else, something rotten, like the breath of a long-dead god stirring from its slumber. Zubari stood at the edge of the village, her spear clenched tightly in her hands. The silver corpse of the Nyoka ya Mwisho still lay where it had washed up, its massive form eerily still. But the ocean was alive with movement. Shadowy figures slithered beneath the blood-red waves, their glowing eyes breaking the surface only to vanish into the abyss once more. Mama Della, she whispered, turning to the village shaman. What does this mean? Mama Della, her face lined with age and wisdom, let out a heavy sigh. She reached into the folds of her robe and pulled out a bundle of aged palm leaves, bound together with twine. The prophecy, she murmured. I prayed I would never have to speak of it in my lifetime. The villagers, gathered in fearful clusters, turned toward her. Even Baba Kuntu, his frail body shaking, leaned in to listen. Long ago, Mama Della began, before our ancestors built this village, before the first canoe touched the water, the gods made a pact with the sea. The land would be given to men, and the depths would belong to the spirits. But there was one rule, one warning, passed down from the gods themselves. She pointed at the monstrous fish lying on the shore. If ever the Nyoka ya Mwisho leaves the abyss, it is a sign that the pact has been broken. And when the pact is broken, the world will fall into chaos. A murmur of terror spread through the crowd. But there is a way to stop it, isn't there? Zubari pressed. Mama Della hesitated, then nodded. Yes. There is an Nkisi, a vessel of great power, hidden deep within the jungle. It was created by the gods themselves to seal the abyss if the day of reckoning ever arrived. Then we must find it. Obesai, Zubari's younger brother, stepped forward. His broad shoulders were tense, his fists clenched. We cannot wait for the gods to destroy us. Mama Della fixed him with a knowing gaze. The journey will not be easy. The Nkisi is guarded by the spirits of the first ancestors. They do not trust the living. Obesai smirked. Then we will prove ourselves worthy. Zubari turned to the crowd. I need warriors. Those who are not afraid to face the unknown. Several men and women stepped forward, including Obesai, a hunter named Kwame, and a fierce woman named Eo, whose scarred arms spoke of battles fought and won. Then let us go before it is too late, Zubari said. The journey begins. The jungle swallowed them whole. The farther they walked, the more the air grew thick, as though the earth itself was holding its breath. The trees whispered with voices that did not belong to the living. Strange eyes glowed in the darkness, watching, waiting. Stay close, Zubari warned. This is sacred ground. The deeper they traveled, the more signs of destruction they saw. Rivers had dried to cracked earth. The once thriving trees drooped, their leaves blackened. Animals lay dead, their bodies untouched, as if even the scavengers were too afraid to approach. The world is already dying, Eo muttered. Then we must hurry, Kwame said. At last, they reached the foot of a great mountain. The entrance to the shrine was carved into the rock, a massive, yawning mouth that seemed to breathe with unseen life. Obesai stepped forward, gripping his blade. So this is where the ancestors wait. Yes, Mama Della had warned, and they do not welcome the living. The guardians awaken. As they crossed the threshold, the air changed. The warmth of the jungle was gone, replaced by a deep, biting cold. The torches they carried flickered violently, struggling against an unseen force. Then, the voices began. Low, murmuring whispers filled the chamber. Shapes flickered in the shadows, tall figures draped in ancient garments, their eyes glowing like embers. Who dares enter the shrine of the ancestors? A voice boomed. Zubari stepped forward, her spear held firm. We seek the Nkisi. The world is falling apart. We must stop it before it is too late. Laughter, hollow and empty, echoed through the chamber. You are too late, child of men. The gods have already begun their reckoning. The spirits rushed forward, their forms twisting like smoke. The warriors braced for a fight. The trials had begun. The air inside the shrine was thick with whispers, echoes of voices long silenced by time. Shadows clung to the walls, shifting like restless spirits, and the torches flickered wildly, struggling against the unnatural cold. The warriors stood firm, their breath visible in the freezing air. Before them, the guardians of the shrine materialized, tall figures draped in ancient ceremonial robes, their faces obscured by masks of carved bone. Their eyes glowed like smoldering embers. Who dares disturb the sanctum of the ancestors? One of the spirits boomed, its voice rattling through the chamber like rolling thunder. Zubari stepped forward, gripping her spear. We come seeking the Nkisi. The world is unraveling. The gods have turned away, and the sea has broken its pact. The spirits murmured among themselves, their words twisting in the air like the hiss of distant waves. Then, the tallest among them, draped in a mantle of woven gold, lifted a withered hand. "The Nkisi is not for the unworthy," the figure intoned. "Only those who prove themselves in the eyes of the ancestors may wield its power." Obesai clenched his fists. "Then test us." A chilling silence fell. Then, the spirit leader extended its bony hand and gestured toward 3 doorways carved into the stone wall behind them. "3 trials await," the spirit declared. "Only by conquering them will you earn the right to claim the Nkisi." The warriors exchanged uncertain glances, but Zubari nodded. "Then we will face them." The spirit stepped aside, allowing the warriors to choose their paths. Zubari, Eo, and Obesai each stepped forward, ready to confront their trials. The first trial, the River of Echoes, Zubari's trial. Zubari entered the first chamber and found herself standing before a massive underground river. The water was dark and still, but as she stepped closer, faces began to emerge on its surface, twisted, familiar faces. They were the dead. "Zubari," they whispered in unison. "You cannot escape us." She froze as she recognized the voices, her ancestors, warriors who had fallen before her. Their gazes were hollow, their mouths stretched into unnatural grins. "You lead our people," they hissed. "But are you worthy?" The river rippled, and a massive wave of black water surged toward her. She had to prove herself, not with strength, but with wisdom. Remembering Mama Dela's teachings, Zubari knelt and placed her hand on the river's surface. Instead of resisting, she accepted the weight of her ancestors, letting their memories flood through her. The spirit screamed, and then, the river stilled. When she opened her eyes, the path was clear. She had passed. The second trial, the Maw of the Earth, Eo's trial. Eo's trial led her into a vast cavern filled with massive stone hands reaching from the ground. The air was thick with dust, and the walls trembled as if the earth itself were breathing. Then, the floor split apart, and from the abyss crawled a monstrous figure, a titan made of rock, with hollow pits where its eyes should be. "Strength alone will not save you," it rumbled. "Prove your heart is as strong as your body." Eo gritted her teeth and lunged forward, dodging as the stone titan swung a massive arm at her. She had fought men, beasts, and spirits before, but this was different. With each strike she landed, the titan reformed, its body reshaping as if time itself rewound its wounds. Then she understood. This was not a battle of brute force, it was a test of resilience. Instead of attacking, she held her ground, enduring each crushing blow without breaking. She fought not with strength, but with endurance. Finally, the titan stepped back, lowering its massive arms. "You are unshaken," it said, before crumbling into dust. Eo had passed. The third trial, the Fire of Truth, Obesai's trial. Obesai found himself in a chamber lit by a single torch. The flames flickered wildly, casting shadows that moved on their own. Then, the shadows began to speak. "You desire greatness," they whispered. "But do you truly know yourself?" Obesai raised his weapon, but the shadows only laughed. Suddenly, the torch exploded into a swirling pillar of fire, and within it, he saw his own reflection, but distorted. It was him, but older, with a crown of gold resting on his head and a ruthless gleam in his eyes. His future self was not a warrior, but a tyrant. "This is what you will become," the flames taunted. "Unless you choose differently." Obesai's hands trembled. He had always dreamed of power, of proving himself, but at what cost? With a deep breath, he stepped into the fire, embracing the heat. "I will be my own master," he declared. The flames roared one last time, then vanished. He had passed. Then Nkisi revealed. The 3 warriors returned to the central chamber, their bodies weary, but their spirits stronger. The spirits of the ancestors stood before them, their glowing eyes filled with something new, approval. You have proven yourselves, the elder spirit said. Then Kisi is yours. From the shadows, an altar rose, and upon it lay an ornate vessel, carved from obsidian, etched with golden symbols, and pulsating with an eerie light. With this, you can seal the abyss, the spirit warned. But beware. The sea does not surrender easily. Zubari carefully lifted the Nkisi, feeling its power surge through her. She turned to her companions. We must return to the village. The final battle awaits. As they left the shrine, the ground trembled, and in the distance, the ocean howled. The Neoka ya Mwisho had not come alone. The true storm was coming. The sky was no longer a vast blue expanse, it was a swirling chaos of black clouds, streaked with eerie veins of green lightning. The ocean churned violently, its once familiar rhythm replaced by a monstrous roar, as if the depths themselves were screaming. Zubari, Eo, and Obesai stood at the edge of the cliffs, gazing down at the village below. Fires flickered in the distance, the huts battered by hurricane winds. The Neoka ya Mwisho, the Doomsday Oarfish, had not come alone. A legion of creatures, twisted, serpentine horrors, slithered out of the water, their scaled bodies pulsing with unnatural light. Each one had milky white eyes, soulless and ancient, their very presence distorting the air around them. The people of the village fought desperately. Warriors swung their spears and machetes, striking at the creatures that coiled around huts, crushing them to splinters. Others used fire, but the beasts did not burn. Then, a deep rumble came from the ocean. And the Neoka ya Mwisho rose. The serpent rises. The colossal fish breached the water's surface, its head alone larger than the largest baobab tree. Its silver scales gleamed like 1,000 mirrors, reflecting the chaos it had brought upon the land. Its long whiskers, like tentacles, writhed in the air, crackling with electric energy. Then, it opened its mouth. A low, vibrating hum rippled through the air, so deep it rattled the bones of those standing near. The hum became a scream, and a great wave surged forward, swallowing what remained of the shoreline. Zubari, gripping the Nkisi tightly, turned to Eo and Obesai. We have to act now. Obesai's hands trembled, but his voice was firm. How? This is beyond anything we've ever faced. Eo's knuckles whitened around her spear. We don't have a choice. We end this. Now. With a nod, Zubari lifted the Nkisi above her head. The ancient relic pulsed with power, its golden symbols glowing brighter as she channeled the strength of the ancestors. A wave of energy surged outward, forming a shimmering barrier between the village and the sea. The creatures howled, recoiling from the unseen force. But the Neoka ya Mwisho merely laughed. A deep, gurgling voice echoed through the storm. You think your ancestors can save you? The sea serpent lashed forward, slamming into the barrier with a force that sent shock waves through the air. Zubari staggered, but held firm. I will drown your world, the creature hissed. And when the last drum falls silent, I will claim your souls. The final battle had begun. The battle for the world. The warriors of the village fought with everything they had. Spears, arrows, fire, all aimed at the creatures that surged from the ocean's depths. Eo leapt onto the back of a serpent beast, driving her spear deep into its eye. The monster shrieked, writhing as she twisted the blade. Blood, black as ink, spread across the sand. Obesai, wielding his twin axes, fought with a fury unmatched. He carved through the horrors, his movements precise, unyielding. But for every beast that fell, two more took its place. And then, the Neoka ya Mwisho struck again. It reared back, its massive body rising high above the ocean, towering over the village. The air grew heavy, charged with an unnatural energy. Lightning split the sky. A bolt, thick as a baobab's trunk, crashed into the village center, exploding into a blinding pillar of light. Warriors were thrown back, the earth itself shaking. Zubari screamed as the barrier shattered, then Kisi's power flickering in her hands. The relic was weakening. The Nyoka ya Mwisho lunged. With impossible speed, the sea god struck, its jaws wide, aimed directly at Zubari. She had only seconds to act. With a final, desperate cry, she hurled the Nkisi toward the serpent's open mouth. The moment it touched the creature's tongue, the world exploded. The reckoning. A shockwave rippled outward, splitting the sea itself in two. The sky blazed as if set aflame, and an ear-shattering roar echoed across the land. The Nyoka ya Mwisho convulsed, its body twisting in agony as the Nkisi's power seared through it. The warriors watched, breathless, as the serpent began to disintegrate, its once mighty form crumbling into streams of golden dust. The remaining sea creatures let out anguished shrieks before collapsing into lifeless heaps. The storm stilled. The ocean, once violent, became eerily calm. The sky cleared, revealing the first rays of the morning sun. The battle was over. But the cost had been great. Zubari fell to her knees, then Kisi shattered at her feet. Smoke rose from the ruins of the village. The wounded lay scattered among the wreckage, their faces painted with grief and relief. Obesai, bloodied but alive, knelt beside her. "You did it." Eo approached, her spear still dripping with the ink-like blood of the fallen creatures. She gazed at the horizon, where the last fragments of the Nyoka ya Mwisho faded into the sea. "No," Zubari whispered. "We all did." For a long moment, they simply breathed. Then, from the village ruins, the single drumbeat echoed into the morning air. The sound of survival. The song of the living. The battle was over, but the wounds it left behind, on the land, the people, and the very fabric of existence, were far from healed. As the first light of dawn touched the scorched earth, Zubari, Eo, and Obesai stood amidst the wreckage of their home. The once thriving village had been reduced to ruins, the huts torn apart, the ground scarred by the fury of the abyss. The ocean, which had once been their provider and protector, now felt like an enemy, its silence as ominous as the storm that had raged the night before. Yet, against all odds, the village had survived. The weight of the fallen. The morning after the battle was eerily quiet, save for the distant wailing of mourners. The elders, those who remained, gathered to count the dead. 54 souls had been lost, warriors, mothers, children. Zubari felt the weight of it crushing her chest. As she stepped through the wreckage, she saw people digging graves, whispering prayers to the ancestors. Women and elders coated their foreheads with white clay, a symbol of mourning. Obesai stood near the largest pyre, watching as warriors prepared to burn the fallen creatures. His face was grim, his knuckles white around the haft of his axe. "They were our brothers and sisters," he murmured. "And now, they are gone." Eo placed a hand on his shoulder, her face streaked with dirt and dried blood. "They will be honored, Obesai. The ancestors will welcome them as heroes." Zubari clenched her fists. "Did we truly win?" she whispered. "A broken Kisi, a broken world." Then Kisi, the sacred relic that had held the power of the ancestors, was shattered. Its golden surface lay in fragments in the dirt, no longer glowing with celestial power. Without it, the balance between the mortal world and the abyss had been forever altered. "The Nyoka ya Mwisho is gone," Eo said. "But the ocean is different." And she was right. The sea, once teeming with life, now felt empty. No fisherman's net would bring back fish today, or perhaps ever again. The creatures of the abyss had not only been defeated, but they had also taken something with them, a part of the world's soul. Zubari exhaled slowly, brushing her fingers over the dust of the Nkisi. "We ended the destruction," she said, "but at what cost? The trial of the ancestors. That night, the remaining elders gathered at the sacred fire to seek guidance from the ancestors. The flames flickered wildly, casting long shadows over the weary survivors. Zubari, Eo, and Obesai stood before them, awaiting judgment. Elder Kwame, the last surviving high priest, rose to his feet. He was frail, but his eyes burned with the wisdom of centuries. "You have done what no mortal has done before," he said. "You have slain the god of the abyss. You have saved the world." He looked to the ruined Nkisi, its pieces still lying in the dust. "But you have also broken the ancient order." A ripple of murmurs passed through the crowd. Zubari swallowed. "What must be done?" Elder Kwame sighed, his gaze heavy. "A sacrifice. The ultimate sacrifice." There had always been a balance between the ocean and the land. The Nkisi had once held that balance, but now, with its destruction, something, or someone, had to take its place. The elders cast the bones, whispering incantations to the spirits. The air thickened with otherworldly energy, and the fire flared blue, signaling the will of the ancestors. Then, Elder Kwame spoke. "The ocean must have a guardian. One who will watch over the abyss, forever keeping the darkness from returning." Silence fell. Then, Eo stepped forward. "I will do it." Gasps rippled through the crowd. "Eo, no," Bobesai started, but she silenced him with a look. "I have always belonged to the water," she said. "I was born in the sea, I hunted in the sea. Let me be the one to guard it." Zubari's chest tightened. "Eo, you don't have to do this." Eo turned to her, smiling softly. "Yes, I do." The elders nodded, accepting her offer. The ritual would be done at sunrise. Becoming the guardian. As the first light of dawn broke over the horizon, the village gathered at the shoreline. Eo stood at the edge of the tide, her spear in hand, her eyes full of determination. Elder Kwame raised his staff. "Let the sea take its guardian." Eo turned to her friends one last time. She embraced Obesai, pressing her forehead to his. "Keep them safe." She grasped Zubari's hand, her voice firm. "Tell my story," she said. "Tell them I chose this." Then, without hesitation, she stepped into the water. A wave rose, not in anger, but in welcome. It coiled around Eo, lifting her into the depths. Her form shimmered, turning to light, until she was no longer flesh and blood, but something greater. The ocean had accepted its new protector. And with her sacrifice, the balance was restored. Epilogue, the Song of the Ocean. Years passed. The village rebuilt, the land healed. But the people never forgot. Every year, on the anniversary of the battle, they gathered at the shore to sing the song for Eo, the warrior who became the guardian of the abyss. And sometimes, when the night was still and the moon hung low over the water, the villagers swore they saw a figure standing upon the waves, watching over them. The ocean's protector. The one who kept the darkness at bay. Forever.